Let me take you back to the moment when the ground beneath my feet first started to crack. It wasn't anything dramatic, no late-night calls, no suspicious receipts in her handbag. No, it was something much subtler. My wife, Leah, and I had been married for 7 years, and for the most part I thought we were fine. Comfortable, even. That's probably the problem, though, isn't it? Comfort has a way of blinding you to the storm on the horizon. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. Leah was in her office, door closed, as usual, and didn't hear me come in. I walked toward the kitchen, only to stop when I heard laughter. Not hers. A man's. Deep, soft, and undeniably intimate. My pulse quickened as I edged closer to the door, pressing my ear against it. "Of course I miss you. Do you even have to ask?" she said, her voice carrying a warmth I hadn't heard in years. I backed away, my stomach nodding. Rationality whispered that it could have been a coworker, a harmless chat. But the pit in my stomach said otherwise. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I waited, watching, listening, and praying I was wrong. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing things I hadn't before. Her phone, once left on the kitchen counter, was now glued to her side. Her excuses for staying late at work became vaguer. But what finally shattered my denial was a notification I saw by accident. She had left her phone unlocked on the bathroom sink, and as I reached for my toothbrush, it buzzed. A message from Kathy appeared. "I can't stop thinking about Friday night. When can we do it again?" Except Leah didn't have a Kathy in her life. My heart sank as I realized what I had to do. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat in the living room staring at her phone, debating if I should look further. The temptation was unbearable. I opened it, my hands trembling, and what I found was worse than I could have imagined. Leah wasn't just having an affair. She had a whole other life: photos, flirty messages, plans for trips, all stored in a hidden app. And there wasn't just one man. There were several. I felt sick. Every image, every word of affection meant for someone else twisted the knife deeper. But instead of confronting her, I made a decision that might seem unthinkable. I didn't want an emotional blowout or the messy theatrics. No, I wanted revenge. Calculated, cold, and precise. That's how it began. I created a profile on one of the social networks where Leah's secret account operated. I made it perfect, an attractive man with just the right level of charm and mystery. I knew exactly what would hook her because, after all, I'd been her husband for 7 years. I slid into her DMs with a simple, "Hey, you seem intriguing. Care to chat?" She replied in less than an hour. My hands shook as I read her message. "You're bold, I like that. Tell me about yourself." She had no idea she was flirting with her own husband. The irony nearly made me laugh out loud, but I held it together. I knew I had to play this right. Leah had built a network of lies for years, and I needed to weave my way through it carefully. I responded with a mix of wit and charm, enough to keep her intrigued but not too eager. My profile was tailored for someone she'd fall for: adventurous, confident, someone who could pull her away from the mundane routine of our comfortable marriage. I told her I was a marketing consultant with a knack for photography, a hobby I conveniently shared with her. Every message I sent was calculated, every detail a breadcrumb meant to lead her deeper into my trap. Leah took the bait faster than I expected. Within days, she was sending messages during work hours, sharing snippets of her day, and laughing at jokes I knew wouldn't have landed if they'd come from me. The audacity was infuriating. She would smile at her phone while sitting across from me at the dinner table, claiming it was just a work thing. Her defenses started to crumble when I pressed her about meeting in person. I didn't push too hard at first, but I could sense the thrill it gave her. She wanted to feel chased, desired, 2 things I apparently hadn't provided enough of in recent years. The irony was suffocating. What shocked me wasn't just her willingness to engage. It was the things she shared. Leah confided in me about her life, her struggles, her boredom with our marriage. "My husband is safe," she admitted one evening, her words like a knife to my chest. But sometimes I just want something more exciting. Safe. That word echoed in my mind as I stared at the screen. I wasn't a man to her anymore. I was a security blanket. A backup plan. My blood boiled, but I forced myself to stay in character. This wasn't the time to let emotion take over. Not yet. By the second week, she was practically begging for a meeting. She even suggested a secluded bar downtown, a spot she claimed was her favorite escape. I'd never heard her mention it before, which told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't her first rodeo. I agreed, of course, setting the date for the following Friday. Leah was giddy for days leading up to it, humming in the mornings, wearing her nicest outfits, and even treating herself to a new haircut. It was almost amusing, watching her put so much effort into betraying me. Almost. When Friday finally arrived, I played my part flawlessly. I kissed her goodbye as she left for her work meeting, pretending not to notice the extra care she'd put into her appearance. Then I drove to the bar an hour early. I didn't want to miss a single moment. The bar was dimly lit, the kind of place designed for secrets and whispered conversations. I found a seat in the corner, out of sight but with a clear view of the main floor. My stomach churned as I watched the door, waiting for her to arrive. And then, there she was. Leah walked in wearing a dress I'd never seen before, her hair styled in loose waves that framed her face perfectly. She looked stunning, radiant even, and it made me sick to my stomach. She scanned the room, her eyes searching for someone she thought was a stranger but was, in fact, me. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. A few minutes later, she took a seat at a booth near the back. She ordered a drink, her fingers tapping nervously against the table. She was excited, anxious, and completely unaware that her little game was about to implode. I waited, watching her, until my phone buzzed. A message from Leah. "I'm here. Where are you?" I typed out my response slowly, savoring every second. "I'm closer than you think." The moment I hit send, I saw her glance at her phone. She read the message, then looked around the bar, her eyes scanning for someone who matched the persona I'd crafted. I stayed in my seat, watching her, letting the tension build. "Closer than you think," she typed back, her lips curling into a faint, mischievous smile. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I watched as she fidgeted, running her finger along the edge of her glass, stealing glances at the door. Every second that passed made her more uneasy. Good. She deserved to squirm. Finally, I sent another message. "You're gorgeous tonight. That dress suits you." Her head snapped up, her eyes darting around the room like a predator searching for its prey. She didn't notice me, tucked away in the corner. I saw the gears turning in her mind. Was someone watching her? Was this stranger closer than she'd thought? She typed back. "Where are you? Don't keep me waiting." I stood, slowly, deliberately, and made my way across the bar. She didn't see me at first, too busy scanning the room for a man who didn't exist. It wasn't until I was standing directly in front of her that she looked up. Her face froze. "Hi, Leah," I said, my voice calm, steady. "Fancy meeting you here." Her eyes widened, and for a moment I thought she might faint. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The color drained from her face as the reality of the situation hit her. I thought you had a late meeting," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Oh, I did," I said, sliding into the seat across from her. "But it turns out I had a much more important appointment to keep. With you." She blinked rapidly, as if she could somehow undo what was happening just by willing it away. I don't know what you're talking about." I leaned forward, keeping my voice low but firm. "Don't insult me, Leah. We both know exactly what's going on here." Her phone buzzed on the table, and she flinched. She glanced down at it, then back at me, her expression a mixture of panic and disbelief. "That's you, isn't it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "The messages, the profile, that was you the whole time?" Bingo. I couldn't help the small smirk that crept onto my face. "What gave it away?" "The way I knew exactly how to flatter you." Or the fact that I showed up to our date? She was silent, staring at me like I was some kind of ghost. I let her stew in it for a moment, let the weight of her lies sink in. You've been playing this game for years, haven't you? I said finally. Using fake profiles, sneaking around behind my back. You thought you were clever, Leah, but you weren't careful enough. You left just enough breadcrumbs for me to follow. She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. It's not what you think. Don't. I cut her off, my voice sharp enough to make her flinch. Don't you dare sit there and lie to my face. Not after everything I've seen. The messages, the photos, the dates you had with other men while I was at work. You've been living a double life, Leah. Don't insult me by pretending otherwise. Her bottom lip quivered, and for a moment, I thought she might try to defend herself. But instead, she just buried her face in her hands and started sobbing. I leaned back, crossing my arms. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her everything would be okay. But the other part, the part that had been broken by her betrayal, wanted to savor her pain. You didn't just cheat on me, I said quietly. You dismantled our entire marriage. You made me feel like I was the one who wasn't enough, like I was the boring husband who couldn't make you happy. But the truth is, you're the problem. You've always been the problem. Her sobs grew louder, and the patrons around us started to glance our way. I didn't care. Let them look. Let them witness the unraveling of the woman who had torn my life apart. I'm filing for divorce, I said, my voice cold, detached. And don't think for a second that I'll let you walk away with everything. I've been documenting everything, every lie, every affair. When this is over, you'll have nothing. Her head shot up, her tear-streaked face contorted with panic. Please, she choked out. Please don't do this. I'll change. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Just don't leave me. I stood, throwing a few bills onto the table to cover her drink. You didn't think about fixing it when you were sneaking around, Leah. You didn't think about me, or us, or our marriage. So why should I think about you now? And with that, I walked out of the bar, leaving her sitting there alone. It was the first step in taking my life back. Walking out of that bar felt like a victory, but it was just the beginning. As much as I wanted to wash my hands of Leah and leave her to drown in her mess, I knew I couldn't stop there. 7 years of lies deserved a reckoning. The next morning, I got up early and began to sift through everything I had collected. The screenshots of her secret accounts, the messages, the fake excuses, the photos she thought she had hidden, all of it. I compiled it into a neat little package, one that would make it impossible for her to deny what she had done. While she was still asleep, I backed up everything onto a USB drive. It felt satisfying, in a twisted way, to know that I held all the cards. When she woke up and came downstairs, looking like she hadn't slept all night, I barely acknowledged her. "Morning," she said softly, her voice tentative. I didn't respond. I just kept sipping my coffee and scrolling through my phone. "Please, can we talk?" she asked, her voice breaking. I finally looked up at her. "Talk about what? The 7 years you spent lying to me? The secret profiles? The men you've been screwing behind my back?" Her face crumpled, and she sank into a chair at the table. "I made mistakes, okay? But it's not what you think." "Oh, it's exactly what I think," I shot back, my voice cold. "You've been cheating on me for years, Leah. And don't insult my intelligence by trying to downplay it." She started to cry again, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no sadness, just the cold satisfaction of knowing I was finally in control. "Here's how this is going to go," I said, my tone matter-of-fact. "I've already contacted a lawyer. We're getting divorced. I'm keeping the house, and I'm keeping everything that matters. You, on the other hand, will be lucky if you walk away with the clothes on your back." Her head shot up, panic flashing in her eyes. "You can't do that," she whispered. "Oh, I can," I replied. "And I will. You see, I've been documenting everything. I have enough evidence to make sure you're left with nothing. Your lies, your affairs, they're all on record." She stared at me, speechless, as the weight of my words sank in. But don't worry, I added, leaning back in my chair. I'm not just going to let you fade into the background. I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth. Your friends, your family, your coworkers, hell, even your little online followers. They're all going to know exactly who you are. She opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. And don't even think about trying to spin this around on me. You have no leverage, Leah. None. I hold all the cards now. For the first time, I saw something in her face that looked like real fear. It wasn't the tears or the pleas that followed, it was that fleeting moment of realization that she had lost. I stood, grabbing my car keys. I'll be staying at a hotel for the next few days while we sort this out. Don't try to contact me unless it's through my lawyer. Wait, she begged, reaching for my arm. Please, we can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll go to counseling. I'll delete the accounts. Just don't leave me. I pulled my arm away, looking down at her with a mixture of pity and disgust. You didn't think about fixing this when you were sneaking around, Leah. You didn't think about us. So don't expect me to care now. I walked out the door without looking back, my heart pounding in my chest. This was only the first move in a much bigger game, and I intended to play it to the end. I checked into a hotel that morning, hoping to get some distance from the chaos at home. I needed time to think, to plan my next moves without Leah's pleas or crocodile tears clouding my judgment. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. But Leah wasn't going to let go that easily. The first sign of her desperation came the following afternoon. My lawyer called, his tone laced with irritation. She's already reached out, he said. Claims she wants to amicably resolve this without lawyers getting involved. I told her that's not how this works. Let me guess, I replied. She's trying to get ahead of the narrative? Exactly. She's painting herself as the victim. Be prepared, she might try to pull some emotional stunts. He wasn't wrong. Later that evening, I got a string of texts from her. I know I messed up, but I don't deserve this. Please, let's talk. Don't throw away everything we've built. You're not perfect either, you know. Maybe if you'd been more attentive, this wouldn't have happened. That last one stung. It was such a blatant attempt to deflect blame, to make me feel like I was somehow responsible for her betrayal. I didn't respond. Let her stew in silence. But the next day, Leah escalated her tactics. I was at work when I got a call from a mutual friend, Rachel. Hey, she started, her voice cautious. I just wanted to check in. Leah called me earlier, and she was really upset. Upset about what? I asked, though I already had a good idea. She said you're throwing away your marriage without even trying to fix things. That you've been distant for years and she thinks she might have made a mistake because she felt neglected. Neglected. The audacity of it made my blood boil. Leah had spent years lying to me, sneaking around, building a whole other life, and now she wanted to rewrite the narrative as if I was the one who pushed her into it? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Rachel, I appreciate you checking in, but you're only getting one side of the story. If you knew the truth, you'd understand why this marriage is over. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I figured there was more to it, Rachel admitted. She sounded off. Like she was trying too hard to convince me. She's trying to manipulate you, I said firmly. Please don't let her drag you into this. Rachel agreed, but the damage was already done. Leah was trying to rally people to her side, spinning her own version of events before I had the chance to expose her. But I was ready for her. That evening, I posted a carefully worded message on social media. I didn't air all the dirty laundry. I wasn't about to stoop to Leah's level, but I made it clear that our separation was due to irreconcilable differences caused by a profound betrayal of trust. The response was immediate. Friends and family started reaching out, offering their support, and asking if I was okay. Leah, on the other hand, went radio silent. I'd taken away her control of the narrative, and she didn't know how to handle it. But I wasn't done yet. Leah's silence didn't last long. It never could. By the end of the week, she was back at it, calling, texting, leaving voicemails filled with a nauseating mix of apologies and accusations. One message stood out. "I'm not the only one who's been dishonest in this marriage, you know. Maybe you should take a look in the mirror before pointing fingers." It was vague, but I knew Leah well enough to sense that she was digging for something, anything, that she could use against me. I almost laughed. What could she possibly uncover that would compare to 7 years of infidelity? The next day, I found out. I got a call from another mutual friend, Mark. He sounded uneasy, like he didn't want to be the one delivering bad news. "Hey man," he started. "I don't know how to say this, but Leah's been telling people you were cheating on her first." My jaw tightened. "Excuse me?" "She's saying you were having an affair, and that's why she started seeing other people," Mark continued. "Look, I don't believe it, but you might want to get ahead of this before it spirals." My blood boiled. Leah wasn't just playing the victim now, she was rewriting history entirely. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer. "She's accusing me of cheating," I said, pacing the room. "Can she actually get away with this?" "Not unless she has proof," my lawyer replied. "And considering your track record, I'd say she's grasping at straws. But be careful. If she can fabricate anything, it could complicate things." I took his advice seriously. That evening, I went through my own digital history, emails, texts, anything that could be twisted or misconstrued. I had nothing to hide, but I wasn't taking any chances. And then it hit me. Leah wasn't just spreading lies, she was trying to cover her tracks. You see, I had been more than just her husband. I had been her safety net. The house we lived in? Mine before we got married. The finances? Mostly mine. If this divorce went through the way I planned, Leah would lose everything. And she knew it. That's when I decided to up the ante. Using the evidence I had gathered, her messages, her photos, her secret profiles, I compiled a timeline of her infidelity. I included details about the multiple men she'd been involved with, complete with screenshots of her conversations. It wasn't just a document, it was a bombshell. I handed it over to my lawyer the next day. "Use this to make sure she doesn't get a single dime more than she deserves," I said. "And if she keeps trying to smear my name, we release it." My lawyer raised an eyebrow. "You're not playing around, are you?" "Not anymore," I replied. A few days later, the fallout began. Leah must have realized I wasn't bluffing because the accusations stopped almost immediately. But it wasn't over. Not yet. I knew the final blow had to be public. She had built her entire social media presence on a facade of perfection: wife, career woman, role model. And I was about to tear it all down. Leah's perfect image was her greatest strength, and her biggest weakness. She'd curated her life online so meticulously that people genuinely believed she was a beacon of success, loyalty, and love. But I knew the truth, and I was about to make sure everyone else did too. My lawyer advised against going public, warning it could complicate things. But this wasn't just about legal strategy anymore. Leah had spent years lying to everyone, not just me. I wanted to rip the mask off, to expose her for the fraud she was. It started with a single post. On my personal social media I wrote, 7 years of marriage, 7 years of lies. Betrayal cuts deep, especially when it comes from the person you trusted most. I never wanted to air this publicly, but some truths refused to stay buried. For those who wonder why Leah and I are divorcing, here's the reality: she's been unfaithful for years, maintaining secret accounts and relationships behind my back. I have proof of everything. I attached a few screenshots, not the most damning ones, but enough to show her secret profile and flirty messages with one of her lovers. It was a strategic move, just enough to start a storm, but not so much that it looked like I was being vindictive. The post exploded. Friends, family, and acquaintances flooded the comments. Some were shocked, others were sympathetic, and a few expressed disbelief, unable to reconcile Leah's online persona with the woman I had revealed. By the end of the day, it had been shared dozens of times, reaching far beyond our circle. Leah's reaction was swift. She called me, screaming through the phone. "How could you do this?" she shrieked. "You're ruining my life." "No, Leah," I said calmly. "You ruined your life. I'm just making sure the truth comes out." She tried to guilt-trip me, claiming I was being cruel, that I was damaging her career. But I didn't budge. This wasn't about cruelty, it was about consequences. Then came the backlash. Her followers, the same people who once worshipped her, began to turn on her. Comments on her posts went from adoration to scorn. "Is this true?" one person wrote. "How could you do this to your husband?" another asked. Leah tried to play damage control, posting a carefully worded statement about mistakes and working through personal challenges. But it only made things worse. People saw right through her, and the more she tried to salvage her image, the more it crumbled. Her sponsors started pulling out. Brands that had once touted her as a role model quietly distanced themselves. She stopped posting entirely after a few weeks, her accounts going silent as the storm raged on. But the most shocking moment came when one of her lovers decided to speak up. A man I didn't recognize, one of her more recent flings, apparently, reached out to me through a private message. He apologized profusely, claiming he had no idea Leah was married when they first started seeing each other. "She told me you two were separated," he said. It was laughable. Leah had been feeding lies to everyone, weaving a web of deceit so intricate that even her lovers didn't know the full story. I asked if he'd be willing to share his side publicly. To my surprise, he agreed. The next day, he posted a lengthy account of their relationship, complete with screenshots of texts and photos Leah had sent him. It went viral almost immediately, adding fuel to the fire. Leah's world was falling apart, and for the first time, she couldn't control the narrative. Leah's silence didn't last. It never could. When she resurfaced, it was with a last-ditch attempt to claw back the life she'd destroyed. A few weeks after her social media accounts went dark, she posted a video, a tearful confession aimed at winning back the sympathy of her followers. She sat in what appeared to be her bedroom, looking deliberately disheveled, her eyes red and swollen. "I've made mistakes," she began, her voice trembling. "Big ones. And I owe it to all of you, my friends, my family, my supporters, to be honest about what's been happening." I rolled my eyes as I watched. This wasn't honesty, it was damage control. Leah went on to admit to straying in her marriage but claimed it was the result of years of unhappiness and neglect. She painted herself as a victim, emphasizing how lonely and unfulfilled she had felt. It was classic deflection, and it infuriated me. But the part that really pushed me over the edge came toward the end of the video. "To my husband," she said, her voice breaking, "I know I've hurt you deeply, and I'm truly sorry. I just wish we could have worked through this privately, instead of airing our pain for the world to see." The audacity of it. After everything she had done, she was still trying to frame me as the villain. The video garnered mixed reactions. Some people bought into her crocodile tears, leaving comments like, "We all make mistakes," and "You're so brave for sharing this." Others weren't as forgiving. "This isn't an apology," one commenter wrote. "It's an excuse. Maybe you should have thought about your husband before you started sleeping around," said another. It didn't take long for her video to backfire. Her attempt at damage control only brought more attention to the evidence I'd posted, as well as the viral account from her former lover. By the next day, her comment section was a battlefield. That's when she made her next move, reaching out to me directly. She showed up at the hotel where I was staying, catching me off guard. I opened the door to find her standing there, her eyes puffy and her hair a mess. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize her. "Please," she said, her voice hoarse. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside, letting her in. I wasn't sure why, maybe I wanted to see how far she was willing to go. She sat on the edge of the bed, wringing her hands. "I know I've messed up," she began, her voice trembling. "I know I've hurt you. But I'm losing everything. The sponsors, the followers, the career I've spent years building, it's all gone." I crossed my arms, leaning against the dresser. And whose fault is that, Leah? She flinched, as if I'd struck her. I'm begging you, she said, her voice cracking. Please stop. Take down the posts, the screenshots, everything. Let's end this quietly. I'll agree to whatever terms you want in the divorce. Just let me have my reputation. I laughed bitterly. Your reputation? Leah, you're worried about the life you built on lies, while I'm cleaning up the wreckage of the life you destroyed. Why should I help you? Her eyes filled with tears. Because I'm still your wife, she whispered. Not anymore, I replied coldly. She broke down, sobbing into her hands. Part of me felt a twinge of pity. She had brought this on herself, but I could see how much it was destroying her. Still, pity wasn't enough to sway me. You made your choices, I said, my voice firm. And now you're living with the consequences. This isn't my fault, Leah. It's yours. She stayed for a few minutes longer, begging and pleading, but I didn't budge. Finally, she left, her shoulders slumped and her face streaked with tears. As the door closed behind her, I felt an unexpected wave of relief. For the first time in weeks, I knew I was completely free of her manipulation. Leah's visit to the hotel was her last attempt at reconciliation, or at least the last I was willing to entertain. I knew the endgame was near, and I wasn't about to let her guilt or manipulation derail my plans. The divorce proceedings moved quickly after that. My lawyer had built an airtight case, and Leah knew better than to fight it. I kept the house, the majority of our shared assets, and, most importantly, my dignity. She walked away with almost nothing, and every time I thought about her smug sense of entitlement crumbling, it gave me a twisted sense of satisfaction. But my plan wasn't just about legal victories. It was about making sure she never hurt anyone the way she hurt me. The day after Leah signed the divorce papers, I activated the final phase of my strategy. I emailed a collection of screenshots, videos, and documents to the two major brands that still had contracts with her. The evidence was undeniable, proof of her infidelity, her lies, and her secret relationships. I wasn't spiteful in my tone. I framed it as a matter of integrity. These companies had built their image around values Leah had blatantly violated, and I knew they couldn't afford to keep her on as a representative. Within a week, Leah's remaining sponsorships were terminated. Her carefully curated fitness career, her entire identity, was effectively dead. The fallout was swift and brutal. People who had once idolized her turned against her with a vengeance. Forums and comment sections lit up with discussions about her betrayal, her hypocrisy, and her lies. How can someone preach self-discipline and integrity while living like that? One person wrote. Leah's silence was deafening. Her accounts remained dormant, her name fading from the public eye as quickly as it had risen. I thought that would be the end of it. But then, Leah tried one last desperate move, a move I never expected. One evening, as I was sitting at home, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed me. But maybe you'll regret it when I'm gone. My stomach dropped. As much as I hated her for what she'd done, I couldn't ignore the possibility that she was serious. I called her immediately, but she didn't answer. I tried again, and again, each ring sending my heart racing. Finally, she picked up. What do you want? She said, her voice hollow. Don't do anything stupid, Leah, I said, my tone sharper than I intended. Whatever you're thinking, it's not the answer. She let out a bitter laugh. You don't care about me. You just want to clear your conscience. I paused, trying to steady my voice. You're right. I don't care about you, not the way I used to. But I don't want you to hurt yourself. If you're in a bad place, get help. Talk to someone. There was silence on the other end. For a moment, I thought she'd hung up. Then she spoke, her voice small and fragile. You've taken everything from me. What's left? Start over, I said simply. Be better. Find a way to rebuild that doesn't involve hurting people. She didn't respond, and after a few seconds the line went dead. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone. I wanted to believe that was the end of it, that Leah would take what little dignity she had left and disappear from my life forever. But the truth was, I didn't care anymore. She had no power over me, no hold on my emotions. Whether she rebuilt her life or crumbled completely, it wasn't my responsibility. Months passed, and life started to feel normal again, or as normal as it could after everything. I kept my distance from Leah, avoiding any contact beyond the occasional update from mutual acquaintances. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my life. Then, out of nowhere, Leah resurfaced. It started with a notification on my phone. She tagged me in a post on social media. My heart sank. I hadn't blocked her, though now I wished I had. Against my better judgment, I opened the app and read the post. To everyone I've hurt, especially my ex-husband, this is my apology. I was selfish, dishonest, and reckless. I destroyed a marriage with a man who loved me, and I have no one to blame but myself. I've spent months reflecting on my mistakes, and though I can't undo the damage, I want to acknowledge it and say I'm truly sorry. Attached was a photo of her, sitting alone on a park bench, looking somber and unkempt, a far cry from the polished, confident image she used to project. The comments poured in almost instantly. Some praised her for owning up to her mistakes, while others weren't as forgiving. Too little, too late, one person wrote. You don't get to play the victim now. I sat there, staring at the screen, unsure of how to feel. Part of me wanted to believe her. Maybe she'd finally realized the depth of her betrayal and wanted to make amends. But another part, the part that had endured her lies and manipulation, couldn't help but see it as another performance, another attempt to salvage what was left of her image. The next day, I got a call from Rachel, one of the few mutual friends I still spoke to. Did you see Leah's post? She asked. Yeah, I said cautiously. What about it? She's serious this time, Rachel said. She's been going to therapy. She's even volunteering at a women's shelter. I think she's trying to turn her life around. I didn't respond. What was I supposed to say? Good for her? After everything, I wasn't sure I cared anymore. Then Rachel said something that stopped me cold. She wants to meet with you. Just once. For closure. I laughed bitterly. Closure? I gave her closure when I handed her divorce papers. I know, Rachel said, her voice gentle. But maybe this isn't just for her. Maybe it's for you too. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe a few days later. Leah was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. She looked different, smaller somehow, like the weight of her choices had finally caught up with her. Thanks for coming, she said softly when I sat down. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. What do you want, Leah? She hesitated, her eyes darting to the table. I needed to say it in person. I'm sorry. For everything. For the lies, the betrayal, the way I tried to blame you for my mistakes. You didn't deserve any of it. Her voice cracked, and I saw tears welling in her eyes. I know I can't fix what I've done, but I'm trying to be better. I needed you to know that. For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. The anger I'd carried for so long felt distant now, replaced by something else, something I couldn't quite name. Thank you, I said finally, my voice steady. I appreciate the apology. But it doesn't change what happened. We're done, Leah. We've been done for a long time. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I know, she whispered. I wanted you to hear it from me. We sat in silence for a few minutes before I stood to leave. As I walked away, I felt a strange sense of relief. Not forgiveness, exactly, but something close to it. Leah's final act wasn't about redemption, it was about accountability. And while I couldn't erase the pain she caused, I realized I didn't need to carry it anymore. That was the last time I saw Leah. Life moved on, as it always does. The scars she left behind didn't vanish, but they stopped hurting. And for the first time in years I felt free. The end. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, hit like and leave a comment with your favorite part. We'd love to hear your perspective.